Hello, my name is John Reynolds. Welcome to Extraordinary Life Stories. On this episode, I'm talking with household name Karen Millen, OBE. The name Karen Millen is instantly recognisable as an iconic fashion brand. I want to know what it was like starting out with a passion for creating a few outfits to having her name in lights on over 100 stores around the country. Let's get into it. I can't wait to talk to Karen. Karen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure. Tell me, who is Karen Millen?
Well, there was a good quote the other day actually that I heard, and I quite liked it. I might sort of
Steal
that one. I'm a woman that's dressed a generation.
A generation or a few generations?
Well, probably a couple of a generation, I'd say. Well, maybe not, no, actually, because it's still going, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose I think of it in terms of when we built it through the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
So that's like 20 years, just over 20 years of building the company. So I kind of relate to it then more than now. But yeah, I mean, it's still going and it's still dressing generations. So yeah.
I mean, I've spoken to a number of people in the build-up to actually filming today, and everyone has a story of a Karen Millen outfit where they went to get their outfit for a do. I mean, it's and I'm 46, so you think about that scenario of 20 years. Sister, girls, friends, my wife, they all were like Karen Millen, so they've got a story.
I know. It's only really sort of recently that I've stepped back into the fold, if you like, that I'm actually realising the impact it's had on so many people's lives. And I love nothing more than hearing some of these women, particularly that go back a long way to the early days, and have these, like you say, these memories of wearing a particular thing and getting a job or whatever it was, getting married, just special memories of it. And I think that's really great. And I was saying to my daughter, maybe we should write a book or put a book together with all these quotes and all these memories and all of these images. I think
that's a great idea. You could actually send that out to people. You'd be amazed. I reckon you'd be genuinely surprised how much you get back. I
think, just from bits that I've had, I'm thinking there's so many people with these experiences, which is such a, it's a fantastic thing to think.
100%. Well, you've influenced and affected countless people's lives. And if you think about the importance of fashion and how you look, and how that makes you feel going to an event, let alone, weddings and so on, the power of a brand is often in its storytelling. And actually, that's a whole way of, so you should definitely do that.
Yeah. No, it would be fascinating and interesting for me to actually read all of those stories myself. I mean, if no one else is interested, I am.
Yeah, and so you should be. It's your name as well. Take me back to a young Karen growing up and the kind of aspirations and influences that shaped the sort of direction you went in with your career.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the question you're always asked because obviously everyone wants to know where you got your inspiration or, when did it all start? How did it happen? I think for me, I think creativity is in your DNA. I think I was born with creativity. And that probably came through at a young age when I would be fascinated by black and white movies even, by the clothes that people were wearing. Then going on to sort of my favourite toy would be a doll, my Cindy doll, which I'd dress, make her own clothes because we came from a very sort of working class background, so money was tight, couldn't afford all the things that went with your doll. You couldn't afford all the outfits and all of the bits and pieces that you could build up. So I'd make everything.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of fun.
From a really young age, you were creating.
Yeah, and I was always aware of my surroundings and yearning for more, I guess, and the finer things in life, if you like.
Yeah.
Without being snobby or whatever, I don't know. I was drawn to beautiful things.
No, totally. So to sort of relate that to potentially someone watching this now that would be almost being inspired by you, wants to get into fashion. So a young Karen, and I know the world's changed with AI and so on, we'll sort of come to that, but just in context of how you then made that a career and put your name above, the door and lights, if you like, how did that ultimately come to be?
Sometimes I think it's by mistake, really. It wasn't necessarily planned. It was just a journey I went on and it just grew. So things happened almost by accident. On leaving school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And my teachers were like, hang on a minute, we think you should be following a career in fashion. I was really shy and really not that confident about things. Anyway, they took me along to a local college, fashion college, and showed me sort of what they did there. And there was an end of year catwalk show. And they said, well, what about this? And I'm like, what do you think I can do that? And they're like, absolutely. We'll put a portfolio together and we'll, do your interview and see what happens. So I got in, and the rest is history, really.
And this was teachers' influence.
That was the teachers' influence in
me. Because there's a lot of stories, me included, where I just slipped through the system. At one point, they recognised your talent and they recognised your interests and they pushed you as well. I think
it's probably because I didn't conform to the uniforms very much. So I was always
Did you make your own uniform?
Things. I didn't make my own, but I adapted it a little bit, and the hair and everything. But also, at that time, I was really influenced by my headmistress. She was always immaculately turned out. And she'd have her office and she'd have these piles of Vogue there on the table. Yeah. So I was just like really impressed. And she sensed that in me, and she would give me her Vogue magazines, of which I've still got from back in the 70s.
Big influence.
So a big influence in that respect. And I think, all credit to them. They were the driving force into the direction I took.
Love that, because there's too many stories, as I say, where people have got lost and not been inspired. But there's a big difference between being inspired and taking action, which you did, and then actually going that entrepreneurial route, because I'd love to know the gap between that and then ultimately hundreds of stores, household name, because that entrepreneurial bit is what scares people. That can stop people, taking those risks. Well, it
scared me at that time, I don't think I even knew what that word meant.
You were just doing it.
I was just, but I wasn't alone. I mean, I was fortunate enough to go on to college and do a 3-year course there. Left there not really knowing what I would do, because I just thought, well, I was in the safety of college. It was great, had a fantastic time, loved it. And then left, thought, well, now what? This whole fashion world is quite intimidating. What do I do? I took myself off on a holiday to congratulate myself, I suppose, of doing 3 years at college, and met Kevin, who then went on to become my partner, both work and personally. And he wasn't in that industry either, so we kind of grew up together. He was studying engineering at the time, but disliked it immensely.
Sure.
And was doing a degree, but decided to opt out after the second year, once I'd started getting things going with the business. And at which point I'd started making shirts for friends. My mum then said, look, I'll do a party plan at home with the girls from the office. What about that? And I said, well, I need more than shirts probably if we're going to do that. So I managed to get a loan of £100 and bought the famous 100 metres of white cotton and run up a small collection of pieces, which was pretty boring, I guess, really. But anyway,
well, it seemed to work.
Went to 3 parties a week pretty much. And then we did that for about 2 years. And by that time, I was buying end-of-line cloth, so it became a little bit more interesting and diverse.
Yeah.
Kevin was getting more involved in helping me cut cloth, and it went from me making everything to using outworkers. So we had about 3 local outworkers that would cut all the work and bundle it up and then take it round to them, then bring it back and then do all the finishing. And sort of after about 2 years, we managed to secure a small shop in my hometown. It all sounds quite easy, really. It wasn't, obviously.
No, not at all. It's a journey.
It was, I'm trying to speed things up.
No, don't. So what I like about it, though, is the fact that I think almost back to my question, you kept going. And you weren't even thinking about it as an entrepreneur. You were just like, what's next? What's next?
Yeah.
£100 loan, da-da-da-da-da. So nothing's easy at all.
No.
I just think it's the fact that the inspiration of it for me is like, and it was obviously fueled by passion. And it sounds like you were allowed to focus on your passion because ultimately you could partner with someone that was entrepreneurial in that sense. Is that kind of what I'm sensing?
Yeah. I mean, I think anyone that's starting in business, the key thing is to do something you absolutely are passionate about, because it's a big part of your life and you have to love it. And I did, and I didn't look at it like work, really. I mean, obviously there were times when it was tough, and some parts of it are tedious. It's not the industry that people think it is all the time. It's not as glamorous. I mean, there are great parts of it as well, but it's a job. But even those parts of the job I loved. I absolutely
You're
loved
right.
it.
You do have to. I've pivoted from property development, and I unashamedly went into it alongside knowing it was a very much a contacts relationship-based business, that you can also have a certain amount of creativity, but it was to make money.
Yeah.
And so when I started to find it more and more frustrating with external events affecting things like Grenfell Tower disaster and most recent interest rates and COVID, in town centre apartments, suddenly everyone wants to live out of the town centre, so on. I didn't enjoy it. So I was firefighting and dealing with stuff, but also thinking, I haven't even got the passion for this.
No,
so I think where if you had the challenges you had, you were always like, I want this to work and I love the industry. And I think that's so key to make the decision at the front end to be interested in what you're doing. So from having that passion point of view, you've now got a business that we know sitting here now became huge. I'd love to know that sort of pivotal moment where all of a sudden you've gone from something you're really enjoying and you've been altering your school uniform to making clothes to now all of a sudden this becomes Karen Millen.
Well, yeah, so many people I think of it as a bit of an overnight success, but it absolutely wasn't, because it was really 10 years before things escalated. So the first 10 years we had 4 stores.
Yeah.
Which is still pretty good, but in today's terms, it probably is quite a slow growth. But, obviously we don't have all the things that we've got available to us now.
You can't compare.
Everything then was knocking on doors and picking up phones. We didn't even have an internet to Google anything.
I was going to say, go viral was not even a saying, right?
It was, so it was really difficult. And so I think inevitably it was a slow growth, and it was a very organic growth, because getting funding for that was really difficult at the time. The rag trade, as it was known then, was a dirty industry. So, it was very hard. So really 10 years of building the infrastructure slowly, organically, was for us probably, in hindsight, the best thing that could happen, because, it gave us time to make lots of mistakes and to put things in place for the moment when things could grow, and I think that's important, making sure that you get your business to a point where everything is ready before you take the next stage, because then it just escalates, which is what happened basically, because we went from 4 stores after 10 years to the following 10 years, 130 stores worldwide. So there's a huge growth there.
What was that like? Was there a moment, because it's your name as well, right? So like, so many businesses brand, and then of course you can be proud as the founder, but to actually have your name in lights above 130 plus stores around the world, that must have been pretty cool.
I know, and that's another thing that everyone sort of says, but the honest answer to that is I never really looked at it as being me personally. It was always, it's the brand now, it's the company name, so it didn't really affect me like people probably would imagine. I think seeing the carrier bags, I think actually was a bit more exciting for me.
Yeah.
And one other thing that was really, and I say this story a lot, but it was one of those moments where I thought, wow. And I was driving down the motorway one day, and we had about 4 or 5 huge lorries that would deliver. So we did all our own distribution as well.
Yep.
And so this lorry was coming back from one of its drop-offs up north one day, and they were huge lorries that were like a carrier bag. So they were this turquoise colour with a big orange dot on my name on it. And when I saw that, I was like, whoa.
So the made it moment for Karen Millen was seeing the trucks.
Yeah, I was like,
I love it.
That was, because you didn't see that very often, because obviously they were delivering overnight a lot, so you didn't see them on the roads during the day so much.
Yeah.
So when I saw it, it was one of those moments, I just thought, wow, that's me.
Yeah. And in context of sitting here now, with perspective, with maturity, with reflection, you achieved that kind of 130 plus stores, ultimately success. What's your definition of success sitting here now?
No, you put me on the
sorry.
spot. I don't know.
I find it so interesting, because if you just define Karen Millen by the number of stores, the big numbers and so on, boom. But I just get the feeling there's a different answer coming.
Yeah, I mean, obviously numbers is a success, but I guess it's the legacy as well, I think, now. And I'm only just realising the impact that it's had.
Yes.
Just now, which is like 40 years on, plus years on.
Good.
The impact that it's had on people's lives. And it's a really, fantastic feeling to feel that you've made a difference to so many people. and really changed the look of the high street at the time. I mean, it was such a significant time through the 80s and 90s on the high street, and we were, at the top of that with a premium, brand, and something to be proud of. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I mean, the success ultimately comes at the cost of failures. You simply can't, you had lots of failures and lots of things that probably didn't go right that aren't necessarily talked about, because once you've got 130 plus stores, all the things that didn't work out don't get talked about. But in context of your relationship with failure, bumps in the road, and what that ultimately builds resilience, talk me through that, because so many people want to talk about the big numbers and so on. But you've had some knocks. You've had the whole use of your name now, which is synonymous with such a successful brand. But ultimately, it's not owned by you anymore. So there's things and decisions you'd have made differently. But what have you learned from all that?
Yeah, I guess at the time when we decided to sell the company, I was pretty exhausted by that 20 plus years journey. It was, it was incredible, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But it was exhausting, and I think, it took its toll on the relationship with Kevin and I as well, which added another strain on how I felt at that time. And so the decision to sell came, it was at the right time for us both. I was exhausted by what was going on in the high street. I felt like it became pretty boring.
So you'd lost your passion for it at that point?
I'd lost my passion for it, my purpose, really.
Shows you how important that is, right? If you lose that, your drive.
No, I think the high street sort of hit its peak pretty much then, and I could just see it was going to implode, and it has in a way. It's taken a bit longer, but I felt it coming. I felt it was changing, and at that point in time, it felt right to sort of step out of it and move on. Yeah,
you've got to make decisions that are the right things to do at the right time, right? So reflection and hindsight, it's all very easy. But in context of mental health being talked about a lot now, in a good way,
Yes,
we've always talked about fitness.
Yeah,
we do, and we should, right? Especially in the kind of world of men not talking to each other. That's a big part of my relationships now, is people checking in with each other, and a part of the relationships I have in this program. How have you prioritised your mental health and your physical health and fitness throughout your life and still now?
Well, I've always liked to keep myself fit. I think it's really important that you stay, your best. You perform better when you're healthy and fit. So I do try to look after myself in that area. And I don't know, it's having that positive energy and mindset. And I've always been pretty grounded, having come from, my background, working class family, happy family. Strong roots, really, that kept my feet on the ground. So despite the success that we had, I remain the same person deep down. And I think that's helped me, overcome some of the things that have happened to me since. So
yeah, no, I get that. Is there anything that works for you? So there's so many things you can do now, from an ice bath to yoga to just going to the gym or going for a walk and getting fresh air. What works
Definitely.
for you?
I mean, I've had dogs, always have dogs. So getting out walking is something I do every day, and I find that I quite like going on my own, because it gives you the time just to sort of switch off and have you time. So that's important to me. But anything that you do, really, I think is good. Whatever suits. We're all different, so whatever suits the individual. But I think exercise is really important.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel better when I exercised, and
I did it.
It sets me up for the day. So I'm one of these people that likes to do my training early in the morning, and then I'm set.
That's interesting, because a lot of people that are successful, CEOs and sort of successful entrepreneurs swear by that kind of get up at 4:35 in the morning, win the morning, win the day. Is that where you sit?
Yeah, I think it is. Without even being conscious of that. That's just the way my body works. That's where I'm in, my happy place. That's how I function.
Yeah, no, I get that. And in context of moving forward to you lost that passion, go through the sale of the business, and you'd noticed the trends that have very much come to bear now, where you've got so much reliant on online and AI coming in now. What are the biggest changes you've actually seen through that, sort of starting that first shot to where fashion is now? What are the biggest changes you've actually seen?
Well, obviously, sort of, if you look back and from when we started with the bricks and mortar type sales approach to when we actually sold in 2004, things were still bricks and mortar. There was no online shopping. It was only just coming into place then, and we'd set up our website to do that. And at a time, I was like, really, are people really going to be buying clothes online? I can't imagine it. I love to be able to sort of touch, feel, and see how things fit. I can't imagine buying something online, and it'll never work.
But that's I was always like that with clothes. It's about the fit, it's about the texture, but it's clearly not stopped it.
No, it's not. And obviously, it's been a great thing. It's given us lots of choice, obviously, so we can shop the world basically.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at the cost of the stores, which I think is a shame. And not only because it's a physical store, but it's that interaction and it's that whole experience you get when you go into a store.
Yeah.
It's hard to get that when you're shopping online, I think. I know they try to do it, but
I think people miss it as well. I think the challenge is everyone's got busier. And the whole going in and having a smell within the store, the scent, the perfume, the music that's being played, and then the hospitality, the service you receive. And we still do that from a restaurant point of view, right? You can't replace that. But I just think it's changed in that sense of the normal shopping experience, and people haven't got the time, and we can justify it by hitting a button.
I think what happened as well is the fact that it got out of control. It sort of exploded. There was too much available. And we were guilty of that. So we went from 130 odd stores, but when we sold it, it grew again to about 360 stores, I think, worldwide. So it was huge. Well, I think it's pretty huge, wasn't it?
100%. You're too humble. Yeah, definitely.
And we don't need that many stores.
No.
And that's why things have just gone wrong. But I think it'd be great to go back to sort of reducing things down. I still think it's important to have those stores. I think it's great, to be able to walk in there, interact with other people, and have the service that you get from those and the experience. So I think, hopefully some of that will come back round again.
Yeah. And talking about come back round again, what's next for you? What's keeping you busy right now, and where's your goals set?
I've been sort of commissioned to do some work with Boohoo, who now own Karen Millen, which I have to say, when they asked me initially after buying it in 2019, I wasn't so keen. I was going through pretty traumatic time myself personally, and I was quite angry, and I just thought, they're going to close all the stores that we built over the past 20, 30 years. That's the legacy gone, and I just was quite devastated by that, actually. And so anyway, I knew people within the industry that kept sort of saying to me, that they're keen to talk to you, why don't you just go and see what they say? And I just thought, do you know what? The time's right now. I feel like I've dealt with all the crap that have gone in my life. And I was ready to go back and do something that I feel I'm good at doing, and that gives me, a great deal of pleasure. And obviously not being able to use my name anymore, it just seemed more obvious to go and speak to the people that do have my name. And because I know the brand so well, I know how it works. And so I went and I spoke to them, and they said all the right things. And a few weeks later, I signed a contract and did a first collection with them last year, 30-piece collection. And off the back of that, they asked me to do another year, which I'm doing now. So I've got 4 collections this year with them.
You're in control. They're your designs. They're not just using the...
So what they asked me to do was my own collections within what they do. So my collections are called The Founder, which they came up with, and I thought was great.
That's cool.
So I like that. So so there's...
That's clever. It goes back to that storytelling thing. It goes back to the original Karen Millen.
Yeah,
I like
absolutely.
that.
And I think it's interesting going back to work within the company as well, because it's so different now. And this is where I'm seeing a lot of the changes, because obviously we went from having stores and designing for stores, and with that we had to sort of think about how are they going to look? How does everything look when it's in the store? So when you're doing your range plans and everything, everything had to work. Whereas now it's all online, so it's a bit like catalogue shopping. They don't have to have such a cohesive range of things. It's just items, really. So, it's very different way of working. No,
absolutely. And one of the contexts of different ways of working, AI, in that creative space. So there's, as recent as in the last year, Drake song that was done with his voice in a style of someone else with this kind of mix in, and then it blows everyone away how incredible it is. How's that not Drake? the creative side of things, what stimulated your whole passion and interest for fashion. Is there a risk of that kind of almost the founder, that kind of sort of AI can't replicate the intricate creativity that someone like you can bring alongside what separates AI? And how's that affecting the fashion industry, in your opinion? How you see it right now?
I don't know. It scares me.
The problem is it's not a problem, but it's here. It's happening.
It is
so
happening,
other people will be
and it's
using
happening
it
really fast,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
I don't know. I'm not quite sure what to make of it. I mean, again, in some circles, it's like all of these things. There's good and bad in it.
Yeah.
The whole social media thing. There's great things about it. There's great ways of getting businesses out there, but at the same time, it's doing terrible things to vulnerable people as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
There's two sides to it, and I don't know. AI, we've got to embrace it because it is the future, I guess. But I haven't quite got my head around it yet.
No, but maybe you don't need to, because that's the bit I was going to get into, is actually the founder, the storytelling, and the fact that you are Karen Millen. So that ripples straight through to the way you design the clothes and the way that people want to buy them. I was just interested to see whether you actually try and embrace that into what you do. But of course, there's the intimidating side of it. And why do I need that? I didn't need it before. I don't need it now.
Yeah, because I'm old-fashioned like that.
Yeah. I was just interested to see whether there'll be a brand that is almost reliant upon AI, and they tap into the algorithm of what people want, and then they just tap in into the algorithm, and boom, there's a collection, and everyone's going, how do they do that? And it's through AI. That can happen.
And I've seen this, and I'm watching it a bit with interior designers as well, sort of doing it, and they're embracing it. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe we do have to embrace it, but it does frighten me. It's because I don't know about it. I don't know enough. I need to do more research, I guess.
And also, that's because it's not your strength. It's not you that needs to be doing the research in that. It's probably the people around you.
Yeah.
And feed in. We could do this. We could do that. But you need to stay on your lane. And
well, that's all I know what to do, really. So, yeah.
And then we've only probably got time for one last key thing, but I think it's important to touch on the charity work that you're doing. Mm-hmm. I want to know what led to that and what you're doing and how people watching, listening might be able to help.
Yeah, well, the charity came out at a time just after we sold the company, actually. So I found myself, with lots of more time on my hands and also plenty of money.
Cool.
And I met with a friend, and she was in a similar position. And we started sort of going to the cancer units sort of here in London, visiting some of the teens there. And it was really through some of the stories within, the hospital units that we realised that there was no one really supporting teens with cancer outside of the hospital. And so we did a lot of research, and my friend Debbie at the time was like, well, we need to do something. And I'm like, okay. And this conversation went on for a while. I said, we need to do a lot of research on this. It's not easy, Deb. This is like another business that you're talking about embarking upon. And she said, yeah, I know. Anyway. And it was really, I think it was the inspiration, really, I suppose, what led to this was a young guy called Chris, who was 19 at the time and had Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he was living with his two younger brothers in sort of a third floor rented sort of council house. So he was the primary carer for them. Parents were not on the scene at all. So not a great, upbringing. And he had no one to support him. So he would have no one coming in to visit him in the hospital. And Debbie, she lived near him. And so she kind of took him under her wing, really, and become his mum.
That's lovely.
Then sadly shortly afterwards, his brother also got Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so they were both going through their cancer journey together. And it was the two of them trying to support each other that made you realise that outside of this little unit, they had no one.
They're isolated.
Yeah. And sadly, Carl, Chris's younger brother, died in Debbie's arms. And there was no money to bury him. It was just awful. So we paid for the funeral. And at that point, Chris said, I've lost my cancer buddy. And we just said, okay, we need to do something about this.
Well done you.
And so Teens Unite Fighting Cancer was born.
Wow.
And
awesome.
That was in 2007. And it's just growing nicely.
Charity's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it is
It's hard.
hard. I mean, so the idea was to support 13 to 24-year-olds going through their cancer journey, so they don't have to feel isolated and alone.
No, it's an amazing cause. How can someone help watching? What is it? Is it just monetary donations? Is there other
It's
things?
everything, and I think we had the conversation earlier about, you know, people tend to think that it's always monetary when you're asking for help with a charity, and it's not. You know, it could be. There's so many ways of helping, whether it's volunteering or gifting or, you know, coming up with events or things like that. But there, you know, there's so many ways. Being patrons and
Yeah.
I don't know. It's endless, really. But
we'll carry that conversation on how. So the program. I've got one last thing I wanted to ask you. You've been awarded an OBE. You had name up in lights. You set up a charity that I can tell has given you massive fulfilment and purpose there. What is your greatest achievement?
Surviving, I think.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Surviving the past 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you have?
Yeah, I have, and I feel I'm good.
Yeah.
I really feel like I've turned a corner.
You've got a twinkle in your eye.
Yeah, no, I'm good, really good.
Good. Well, I massively appreciate you making time to sit and talk with me today. I've been looking forward to it, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.